You're listening to Rogue Table Talks. Here's Mike.
Here we are, back again, Rogue Table Talks, number 111, which is uno.
I think that's true.
No way.
No, I don't think it is.
That's offensive. I'm going to get canceled. If we had any real listenership, I probably would be canceled by now for saying such things. For slandering Spanish speakers.
More than what? How many listeners? Slandering
a few hundred.
Speakers.
Yeah. I'm guessing we don't have a lot of people out there passing our podcasts around to be. In a way, it would be a step forward if we had.
It would be a step forward if someone tried to cancel us.
Someone tried to cancel us, because that would mean a lot of people. So that's our business plan.
Really
that's our business. That's our business plan. That's our growth plan. 111. Speaking of cancellation, our theme is redemption and stories. We live in a very non-redemptive culture, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment.
Almost anti-redemption.
Redemption bad, cancel good.
Mm-hmm. Judgment and payment.
Yes.
Vengeance, like this.
Right. Righteousness.
These are the values. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Get him. Show him how good you are by crushing him forever.
Which is ironic.
That's what we do. That's how we prove our goodness, by crushing other people. By crushing the imperfect people under our feet.
Well done.
Yes. All right, redemption. Here we are. We're talking about stories in the big story, stories in our story, redemption stories. And so I want to start with, what's redemption? What is redemption, and how is it different from just straight innocence? Thoughts?
How's redemption different from innocence?
Mm-hmm.
Say more about the question.
Well, okay. So, putting it in a biblical question, how are we different from the angels when it comes to redemption and innocence? And why is that important? The good angels. Well, okay, even the bad ones. I guess they can come into the conversation as well. You know where I'm going with that? What do you think? Your thoughts?
I don't. I'm like, this is a really big question.
You're intrigued. Hopefully our listeners are intrigued.
What are you trying to say?
All right. Okay, so let me read a passage and tell you what I think. And then it's Peter, 1 Peter 1, talking about our salvation and how it has fit into redemptive history. He says, concerning this salvation, the prophets who prophesied about the grace that was to be yours searched and inquired carefully, inquiring what person or time the Spirit of Christ in them was indicating when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the subsequent glories. It was revealed to them that they were serving not themselves, but you, in the things that have now been announced to you through those who preach the good news to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things into which angels long to look. So he's talking about the predicted Messiah, the predicted coming of our Redeemer, the one who is to redeem us, trying to understand from the Old Testament perspective, this sense that the prophets were prophets, but they did not have perfect knowledge. They had the words God gave them, but they wondered with everyone else, when the Christ would come. The prophecies predicted the sufferings of Christ and the subsequent glories. And all of that was about us, Peter writes, the ones that are the ones who are being redeemed. And angels long to look into such things. And there's this real sense in which we're in a different situation than the angels who don't need redemption. They were innocent. They're angels. They have not. They are not in need of redemption. We, on the other hand, are not like the angels. We've been redeemed. We have fallen. I mean, the angels that fell are demons now, and in God's providence and plan, there appears to be no road for their redemption. However, redemption is offered to us in Christ. So that's one way in which we're different from the angels, and one way in which redemption and innocence are different. Redemption, in a sense, it starts from a place where we're not innocent, because if we were innocent, we would not need redemption, right?
Yeah, a necessary part of redemption is that you're not innocent. So, it's interesting because my mind is still on a side note. We should do something on angels.
We did. Yeah, we should. Yeah.
That's very intriguing. Like, what are they? What do they do?
What's the deal with angels?
What's the deal
By Mike and
with
Chad.
angels?
Yes. What's the deal with angels? It sounds like the beginning of a Christian comedy routine. What's up with these angels?
Or like a really bad Hallmark movie.
Yes. The title of a really bad Hallmark movie. What's the deal with angels?
Maybe they're all bad, but this one would be really bad. Yeah, so, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it. Like, similarities between humanity and angels. We're all created beings.
Right.
So the angels were created and we're created, and therefore, no one bears the creator role with God, and everything that exists outside of him is part of a created being. And yet, when we talk about creation, we don't always consider them a part of it, maybe because they're not material. They're not necessarily physical, and yet they can take physical form. So we're dealing with a whole nother realm there. But
that's a whole nother podcast. Right.
But like you said, they angels, so angels and demons, the difference of fallen angels or demons, and there is no chance for redemption, as far as we understand.
As far as we know, right.
Scriptures. And angels, which if we kind of hold to the theory that that a third of the angels fell and became demons, and so there's 2/3 more righteous angels than fallen angels or demons. But they don't need redemption,
right?
Because they didn't fall. They didn't choose to rebel, and they're a part of God's perfect, which is interesting. The fall didn't touch them in no way, shape, or form. No sin.
Right.
So they don't need redemption.
Right. Yeah, and in this, this passage, which is we don't really know exactly what Peter's saying, other than just the sense that angels, they long to look into these things. Like it's our story of redemption is of great interest to the angels, which is an interesting thing. Also, there's a lot there too about, God doesn't owe us redemption. He chose to redeem us. He did not choose to redeem the fallen angels in his providence. That choice is not explained, as far as I know, anywhere in Scripture. It's, God made that choice. So he chooses to offer redemption to us, and he does that through this plan of redemption that kicks off right after the fall in Genesis 3, and, that his son would come, and, prophets and God's people would be formed, and promises and worship and sacrifices, and then the Messiah, his son, would come. This grand sweeping epic plan of redemption, and we're still in this redemptive phase that will be completed in the future. We're in this story of redemption, and it's different from, we're in a different place from not needing redemption. It's different to be redeemed than to be always innocent. And I think it's different in interesting ways, I think. And I kind of want to get into some of the interesting ways in which it's different. One of the things we're saying is, well, let me Let me talk about kind of the most obvious, analogous story, book made into a movie. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Edmund is one of the four children in the story, and he betrays. He falls under the thrall of the White Witch. He betrays his siblings. He lies to them. He tries to get on the side of the witch. He's enchanted by, and as a result of his betrayal, Aslan must die to purchase his redemption for him and for all of Narnia. And after that, Edmund is in a different position than if he had never betrayed his siblings. And in some ways, he's in a better position. He understands who he is better. That he has betrayal in him was always true. And now he knows it. If he remembers his redemption, he knows it for a certainty. He has a humility and a grace for other people because he knows he really messed up and needed redemption. And so in some ways, to remember that we're redeemed and not innocent is key to our identity, to our story, to how we live out our story, to being people of grace, to offering grace to other people. Other people need redemption, but no more than I needed it or need it. And so I'm in a different position. I'm not like an angel. I can't speak, I can't just, proclaim God's truth and goodness from on high. I'm down here with everyone else who needed redemption and has been redeemed. And, ground is level at the foot of the cross, they say, but the ground is level, should be, all throughout the church, because we're all in the same essential position. And sometimes we need a story or two to sort of get us to realize that. And I think that's why one of the reasons Jesus told stories of redemptions and he told parables of redemption a lot is because it's the younger son is in a different position, a better position when he returns than before he left and betrayed his father in a weird sort of way. Like it's bad that he betrayed his... Go ahead.
Well, he wasn't innocent prior to that.
Right. He was never innocent.
He was never innocent prior to that. And Edmund was never innocent prior to that. It's just that he acted on what his nature was. And the younger son acted on what his nature was, and it revealed itself. And then he was in need of redemption.
And did damage.
Redemption, yeah. Puts you in a better position than not receiving redemption because you don't know you need it.
Yeah, and so I think that's an important thing for us to grapple with when it comes to redemption, that we are the redeemed, that our slates are clean and we are counted as innocent. It's not the same thing that we've always been innocent. And
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just think it's not the same thing. It's in a way, it's a better thing. And I'm not saying, let us do good or let us do evil that good may come. I'm just pointing out it's essential to our story to realize that God takes our fallenness and does something good with it.
Well, and I think it's important to say it. There's several ways to think about it. Two of the ways to think about it are positionally. People who profess faith in Christ are in Christ, and positionally, we've been declared not guilty. We've been declared innocent. Those things are true, and yet practically, we're not innocent.
Right.
There's going to be another betrayal or another. I wish you were dead. Give me all my money, and I spent it on things that didn't satisfy. There's always this somewhere, and I think it partially depends on what story do you need to hear, or what side of that story do you need to hear. It partially depends on what kind of person you are. If you're a person who's ridden with shame and ridden with guilt, and you have a very low self-worth and you think you're just trash, then you probably need to start focusing a little more on positionally, I'm clean and free and loved, and I don't have to perform to get any of this stuff. But if you're the kind of person who, tends to minimize your own faults and think that you're better than others and look down on other people, or you use your morality to, as we joked about earlier, like I'm the good guy because I crushed somebody.
Hmm.
Well, then you probably need to focus and be more aware of, practically, I'm not innocent. This is probably where you need to think that through.
Yeah, I think there's a sense in which maybe to say it in a different way, which is not maybe exactly, I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but redemption offends us in some ways. And depending on who we are, it offends us in different ways. In some ways, some people are almost offended by their own redemption. Like, that seems like I'm horrible. How can that have happened? And then
Yeah,
some
that's a
people
good
seem,
point.
right? Some people seem offended by other people's redemption. Like they're horrible. Uh, and
Yeah,
it's offensive, right? It's something seems, it's too easy. It's too, like you're getting away with something or whatever, right?
right, right. Yeah,
And depending on who we're offended for our own sakes or we're offended because of other people. But it is sort of, that's the scandal in a sense of
hmm.
the cross, right? It's scandalous that we should, and the older brother has kind of a point on the surface. Like he doesn't deserve a party. No, it's true. He doesn't.
Yeah. That voice isn't untrue.
That's
Right.
stuff. No, like nobody deserves a party, but we get one because the Redeemer wants to throw us a party, and I
I
think
think
that's
that
a
the older brother's problem had very little to do with the younger brother, although he thought it was his problem. It wasn't even
yeah.
about the party and the younger brother. It was about he's really just wanting to spite the father. And you know what? You never gave me anything, and look
Mm,
what kind of father you are.
mm,
That's what Cain and Abel was really about. It was about Cain wanting to spite the Creator because for whatever reason, God saw through his motives,
mm, mm-hmm,
and he didn't accept his offering, and it wasn't pleasing
mm-hmm,
because maybe like the older brother, he was trying to use the offering to manipulate the father and control the outcome and circumstances,
mm-hmm.
and so I think it's really about the older brother, less about I don't want him to have a party, more about I'm just filled with resentment and spite.
Yeah. So you're kind of into this cancellation mode, this sort of,
And
yeah.
it's really the spite that people are filled with. It's interesting to be projected on other people. If this is you, I'm angry at you, you're the problem. But if people are really, really honest, it's we're embittered at the Creator.
Mm.
We're trying to spite God. This didn't work out, and you never even gave me a goat.
You never even gave me a goat.
I've been a good person my whole life, and you never gave me a goat. So the hell with
Right.
you.
Right. And then Luke
That's the
18 is
tone of
this,
his voice.
yeah, Luke 18 is the same sort of, Jesus tells his parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus: God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Uh, and uh, it's the older brother. It's this sense of justice. Like I'm better than this person, and I'm going to go through the motions of thanking God that I'm better. And and it kind of points to, okay, where redemption is in our story. The one who admits he needs redemption is the one who goes home justified and is the one offered to us as the example we should follow. The one who tries to say, I don't need redemption, is the one who goes home not justified, and is the one to whom we're not to follow. But, you're looking our cancellation culture, or cancel culture, outrage culture, it's, the things are flipped, is the Pharisees are canceling the guilty.
Mm-hmm.
The problem isn't that they're guilty. The problem is this sense of, you're the Pharisee here. You're going to need redemption. You do need redemption. And by not offering it to others, you show yourselves to be outside of this redemption story. And it's not going to work. But again, you sort of understand the point of those people deserve bad things, because that is true. We do deserve bad things. That God in his grace took the bad things for us does seem sort of scandalous. And I think it does change the story for us, that we're not the innocent. We are the redeemed.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another movie. You've seen Gran Torino?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I like it.
Clint Eastwood is kind of a bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, he's racist, angry, proud, dismissal,
Mm-hmm.
judgmental. And yet he is redeemed in a sense by his act of redemption at the end of the movie. And how different a movie would it be if the same thing happened? He redeems this family at the end, but he was like, angelic throughout the whole movie. Like, it'd be a whole different movie. We wouldn't even like it.
No, probably not.
It wouldn't be a very good story, because it would be so outside of our story, outside of our reality, outside of our, our lives, that the scandal is that bad people get redeemed, and we want it, but it does still kind of intrigue us, draw us in, scandalize us. The redemption is scandalous.
Well, and I think there's something else at play in that as well, because you've seen other storylines with, here's the hero, and he is kind of an upright moral character, and he protects the innocent and all this stuff, and he goes ahead and lays down his life for the village or whatever, and that's attractive because that's very Christ-like. But this storyline is not. It's not the same as Christ's sacrifice, but there's something else that's appealing. It's like Moana. You start to realize later in the story that Maui was the bad guy. That Maui was one of the bad guys who stole the heart of Te Fiti, and then in the end, he put it back. He wasn't just this great, perfect guy, but I think there's another aspect of redemption here that we really connect with, because we desperately want to know if there's hope for change.
Yeah.
Like, can I be this hardened, dismissive, racist, judgmental person, and yet can I change? Like, is it possible for me that I don't have to stay the same, that I can get redemption because I actually saw myself for what I was? Like, when Moana, and I'm bringing that other movie in, when she finds out the truth that it was Maui that stole the heart, that was the best moment for him, because now someone else knows, and now you have the opportunity to change,
To step into redemption.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's another angle for us to consider. Consider a world without redemption. I mean, it would be oppressive. There would be no hope. You'd have to, like, you step off the path once, and that's it. And then who makes it? Well, no one makes it. We all just have to try to pretend to make it. What a bleak story that is, because we all step off the path, and we all need redemption. And yet there's some sense in which we want to believe by showing outrage for other people, then we're distancing ourselves from them and sort of whistling past the graveyard of our own redemption. We don't really need redemption. I would never say something like that. I would never do something like that. They deserve to be, you know, pilloried for their many sins. And you know, the world of redemption scandalizes us, but without it, there'd be no hope. We would have to pretend. We'd have to pretend, or just that's another sort of storyline that you see in movies where people just kind of buy into their own unredeemed selves. Like they just, okay, I'm redeemable. I'm going to live that out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people do that, in real life, is they come to believe themselves to be worthless, unredeemable, and they live
Well,
accordingly.
right. And then you see them spiral down into self-destruction and sabotage, and you know, on whatever level their own sense of neglect. They never viewed themselves like they were worth helping.
Mm-hmm. Right. It makes me
Not
think
worth
of,
helping.
it's not a movie, but it's Breaking Bad, is this anti-hero story, and probably a lot of anti-hero stories are the same, where in a sense he preferred to embrace this new identity of this powerful crime lord, basically. When, you know, starting out as a milquetoast passive chemistry teacher,
Mm-hmm.
like it gave him something. It gave him a sense of power and identity, and it ruined everything. You know, it. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of that series, it's just there's no redemption because he chose a path away from it, and that's one of the conceits of the story is he has 137 off ramps,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't take any of them. Yeah, and at the end, he sort of admits, "I liked this," and you know, so he embraces his own destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the other side of redemption: is you do have to, at some point, you need to grab hold of it. You know, you need to not be the Pharisee and not be the older brother.
Well, and it's you know, sometimes easy for the cynic or the skeptic to look at, you know, stories like Breaking Bad, but that also happens in real life, and say, well, you know, where was God? You see, God didn't intervene, and God didn't rescue him, and God didn't. Okay, but this is what he wanted,
Right.
and this
This is what
is
he chose. Yeah.
chose, and um, in many ways, God doesn't intervene and allows us to get what we actually want.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that ends up for us, we break good. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
opposite phrase of Breaking
Yeah.
Bad.
Right.
We hit rock bottom and say, no, this is okay. I did want it, but now I don't.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd like to have a different life.
Yeah. And that's part of, I think, redemption is, yeah, I did want that. And no, didn't work out. I'm going to choose, I'm going to recognize, you know, what is the first step of a 12 step, that I recognize that I'm powerless. And that's the story of redemption, is not a story of innocence. It's not a proud story. It's a humbled, gracious story. And, you know, there's, it's, what is it? Psalm 107:2 is, let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Or I think it's, let the redeemed of the Lord say so is the
Mm-hmm.
song, which I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
version that is. And so we are to tell our
KJV.
stories of, what's that? King James? KJV?
I
Of
think
course. Of course it is. The poetic version, but not completely accurate, but poetic. Is that we're encouraged to think of ourselves as the redeemed ones, to tell our stories, you know, to say, I know my Redeemer lives, that we needed redemption. We are children of redemption. And that changes us. We're now in the position of Edmund. We know we betrayed. We know we screwed up. And we know that it cost and it damaged. And yet redemption was offered to us. And we are that's that story angels long to look into. And we then therefore need to be agents of redemption. We've been given this ministry of reconciliation because we've been redeemed. And so stories of redemption are important because we should be living a story of redemption and should be offering that story to others. Right?
Well, and it says, let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, and that means all of our story.
Mm-hmm.
That means the ugly parts too, because without that, there is no redemption. And that's, it reminds me of, so I've said this before, I'm on Jordan Peterson kick, but he says the holy trinity of the underworld is arrogance, deceit, and resentment. And those three things will ruin you unless you get a hold of those pretty quick. And I think one of the ways that we do sabotage our own potential for redemption is we just lie to ourselves. We don't want to tell the truth about our story. I don't want to admit that I like causing people pain because it makes me feel good to cause people pain. I don't want to admit that I'm a liar. I don't want to admit those things, that I'm not the best husband, that I'm selfish, and that I'd rather sit down and watch sports than listen to my wife. I don't want to say those things, but those things are true. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of song by the Avett Brothers, which is, the chorus says, tell the truth to yourself and the rest will fall in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can, part of our story is, we can just start there. Just tell the truth to yourself. Just be hopelessly honest.
Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story to themselves.
Yeah.
Right? We need to tell our redemption story to our own selves, preach the gospel to ourselves every day. And that's right. The truth is we need redemption. Truth is we're broken and need redemption, and our children are redemption, and we are to celebrate that. So let's leave that there. Let's celebrate redemption, our redemption, tell the truth to ourselves, and celebrate what God has done and this story of redemption we're in. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. And be children of redemption and have grace to offer to others. And with that, we'll leave it there. Grace and peace.
Thanks for listening to Rogue Table Talks. Be sure you're subscribed to our podcast wherever you listen and on our YouTube channel. Just search Rogue Table Talks.